You are listening to The Growth Signal. My name is Alyssa Nolte,
And I'm Abby Hammer.
and we're going to get right into it. Abby, let's hear it. What's your hot take?
My hot take is that the future of customer success is autonomous, meaning that AI and automation are going to run the majority of your customer relationships. And importantly, I genuinely believe that that shift is what will finally allow customer success to be more human than it's ever been.
So, before we get into it,
Mhm.
I think we should probably give the listeners, if they are not familiar with you, if they haven't come across you before, tell us a little bit more about your background and give us some context on why this is your hot take.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am in a bit of an unusual position. So I am our chief product officer, meaning I am responsible for what we build at Turn Zero. And I am also our chief customer officer. So I'm responsible for how our customers experience those solutions. These two roles don't usually roll up to the same seat, but we do that here at Churn Zero because it's a very real reflection of how we think about customer work and as we're designing solutions. In my experience, the very best product experiences and decisions come from being very deeply immersed in the realities and expectations and day to day challenges of the teams that you serve. So as we think about being a platform that serves our customers where they're at today, but very importantly also pushes them towards what their job and their profession is going to look like tomorrow, it's very critical for us to have those two teams be in lockstep. I've been here from the beginning at Churn Zero, a founding team member. That's all the way from the early days of just trying to convince people that customer success mattered and that those teams deserved real software, then the platform era, and now the AI wave, which honestly feels like some of the most exciting and consequential chapters that we've had yet. And that's what gets me into my hot take. I've been in customer work for a long time now. And frankly, CX has always had a bit of an identity crisis. Like we say that the role is about relationships and outcomes and strategy, but in practice, teams spend a lot of their time just drowning in the admin, logging notes, making decks, chasing data. And for the last few years, automation has been chipping away at that, through onboarding sequences and health scoring and alerts and renewal triggers, all that sort of stuff. There is real plumbing in place. But what AI is going to be able to do, is already doing and will be able to do even more, is add the brain. It's not just, hey, send that email at day 30. It's here's what this customer needs right now. Here's a way to say it that's going to resonate with this particular group. So it's really allowing automation to handle the motion while AI handles the judgment. And what excites me about that is certainly, sort of getting rid of some of that low value work. Like AI and automation can take those things over completely, and they can do it better, faster, and at a scale that a human team can't. But I am really excited about the brain part of this as well. It's certainly going to play out differently across different segments. But for a high touch team, it means that a CSM can really be freed of a lot of operational noise that has, drug them down, and they can focus on the work that really matters. And for lower touch segments, especially SMB or long tail segments, it's going to raise the floor. We haven't been able to really service those customers in a meaningful human forward way because it's just not scalable. It's just not realistic. So this isn't AI necessarily replacing something that customers had access to. It's delivering something that they've never had before. Um, and so, the big question that when I say this to people, they're like, okay, so what does that mean in reality for CSMs? Like what's left for the humans to do? And as a CX professional, that's what excites me because I see this as the way back to everything that CX was supposed to be. It was supposed to be about relationships. It was supposed to be about helping, having honest conversations when a customer is struggling or really working on that strategic partnership and helping someone think about their business in a different way. So I don't see this as the death of CSMs. It's just a removal of everything that's diluted the role, frankly. That's distracted us and diluted the role. And it's giving our teams a realistic and meaningful way to spend their time and energy on the work that actually lights them up inside.
I just took about like a 10,000 pages of notes because there were so many important things in what you were saying. I did a roundtable, it was probably about a year ago now, where I brought together a sales professional, a marketing professional, and a customer success professional, right?
Mhm.
It was like basically a conversation of frenemies in which I was kind of mediating. And it was so interesting because one of the sales guy kept referring to the customer success person as customer service and customer support,
Mhm.
and kept, like, talking about the role as if it was a service role, a support role, a tech support role, and I kinda watched the customer success guy, wrinkle
Or
at it a
yeah,
little bit,
little
but then, like,
yeah.
we're in a public like, we're on a live video, we're not gonna correct him, but I kinda watched that, like, light dim a little bit in his soul when he kept getting relegated is the wrong word, but, like,
Sure.
put in that box of customer service and customer support, and so I wonder if it's maybe, like, good, death to the CSM role because nobody really understands it, because it's become a catch-all role, because it's become this thing that it was never meant to be, and the S of customer success keeps getting swapped out for support and service and those things that our AI could and should be doing, and maybe it's okay that AI is gonna take your job because good, come and get it, so I can elevate to what I intended to be in the first place.
Right. Like, no one's like, "You know what I got into customer work to do? Fill out notes, update fields in my, CSP or CRM." Like, no one got into the
Yeah.
work to do that. One of the lovely things about being in the CSCX community is that it's a very generally speaking, it's a very people-focused group of people, you know? It's, people that are attracted to the role, like forming relationships. They like having an impact and getting to see that. And that is sort of the kernel of truth that customer success was built on. But to your point, there are still a lot of organizations that see it as a cost center, I mean, we could have a whole other separate conversation about revenue ownership in customer success. I have lots of opinions about that. But really, customer success in its best form is proactive, is outcome based, and is revenue owning and revenue forward, both for the good of the business, but also for the good of the customers that you're servicing. So, I mean, if we're truly honest, we've been talking about customer success for the last 15 years. And frankly, for a lot of us, it's actually more customer administration. So I would love this idea. I love this idea. And I'm actively building towards this idea of how can AI empower us to actually get back to the stuff that we would be happy to do every single day, that actually, the reason those of us got into the role, and frankly, the things that can really make the difference in a partnership. No one renews with you. People renew on your product and on your services, and no one renews because they're like, yeah, they log great notes about me. They renew because they have a CSM that shows up in their conversations that adds to their value, that helps them rethink what they're doing, and they're really a thought partner with them on this. And that's only possible. We've only got so many hours in a day, so that's only possible if we get rid of all the others.
Well, and not only that, like, the ability to have access to everything you've ever learned about the customer at your fingertips, right? Because
Mhm.
these days, customers and their expectation that you know them,
Yeah.
that is table stakes, right? Like, I expect my doctor when I
Mhm.
walk into their office and I'm sitting there waiting, when they come in, I don't wanna have to rehash my entire medical history. I don't wanna have to go through everything I've ever talked to them about. And I
Mhm.
actually fired my newborn's pediatrician because he had medical issues. We'd come in every week, and every week we'd have to go through the same thing. It was like we were brand new people. It was like 50 First Dates on that old Adam Sandler movie with my doctor, and I finally said, you have a chart. You have all of this information on me. Take the time to look at it." And I am sure, like, she was busy, she had a lot of patients, everything was back to back, so I'm not, like, faulting her there.
Yeah.
However, we have these cool tools like charts, and I think AI can be the thing that really opens up that true feeling of personalization for
Yeah.
CSMs when they are overloaded, when they're managing too many accounts,
Mhm.
so that they can walk in and have a strategic conversation, a success-focused conversation, rather than a note taker, order taker, admin
Yeah.
conversation.
100%. And it is really hard. Think about a customer you've had for 2, 3 years. Think about everything that's gone on in that
Yeah.
relationship. And even if as a CSM, you wanted to show up, knowing all of that, like, what does that prep look like if you don't have something that helps you sort through and, understand what matters, understand the key points in the relationship, and also, frankly, act as another CSM being like, hey, what do you think I should do in this scenario? What would be the best thing? What should I focus on? What's going to move the needle for them? That doesn't mean that we still don't need humans in very particular relationships. I always say, I think we look at customer support, and customer support hasn't become only humans. And that's a much more, in many cases, this is no shade on customer support, but that's usually much more like, I have a question or an issue. I need a solution. It's a much more A to Z kind of relationship versus customer success that can have all these different variables. So I just don't see it getting fully replaced, but I do see huge parts getting replaced. I think the CSMs and CS leaders that will do well in this transition are the ones that lean in and say, all right, it's scary to let go of certain skills. I was actually just saying this to a couple of my team members the other day. I use AI every single day. And in some ways I'm going through the paces of feeling sadness about skill erosion on certain things that I used to identify as things that made me, good at my job, like, hey, I can write an A+ email. All right, that's great. And sure, because of when I came up, that was probably a thing that moved me forward in my career. That's no table stakes. So instead of being sad that I have to let go of this skill, and that's not to say there isn't value to that skill. I can hear people being out there like, we have to have critical thinking. Yes, I'm not saying that, but instead of being sad that I'm letting go of the skill, what am I filling it with? Whereas, what does that open me up to do? So it's going to be the people that can take that perspective to say, yes, I welcome, I can't afford a human assistant, but I can afford an AI one. So like, I welcome them taking these things because then my uniquely human brain can, can really focus on what matters. And, I think the other thing that freaks out some CX people is that they worry that the customer experience is going to degrade as part of this potentially. And like, look, if we're being honest, yeah, there's probably, it's not going to be perfect out of the gate. Nothing ever is. But, I think if it's done right, AI can actually help the experience feel more tailored, more timely, more frictionless, because they can keep up with customers in real time in a way that is just not possible for a human, even a super well intentioned, on the ball human. So why wouldn't we pair for that to get the best of both worlds?
So, a couple of things that I want to touch on, mostly about what you think is the biggest blind spot and the ways that people are doing this the wrong way, right? Because I do fear that you and I are having this AI conversation and we're both like power users of
Mhm.
this solution. So we know its limitations inherently. Like, okay, we've run into this. Like, okay, I want to write an email, except it rewrites the entire tone of the email. And so now I have to start over.
Yep.
However, I think a lot of the general populace is either hearing one of two things. This thing is not going to do anything. It's just smoke and mirrors, flash in the pan, just wait it out and it'll go away. Or the other side of it, the other end of the spectrum is it's this magic solution that's going to change everything.
Yeah.
And so I think AI in general has a real expectations management issue
Oh,
where you either believe it is going to be garbage or you believe it is going to be life changing. And so, how do we make sure that when people get into implementing AI in their organization, when they bring on Churn Zero and start to use it, that their expectations are set so that they can make the most of the solution and benefit for their business?
yeah. I mean, you bring up such an important point. I could probably yap about this for 2 days, but I mean, look, we're all trying to get people to pay attention to what we're saying. So I feel like people are gravitating to the extremes because that's what gets people to pay attention to, click on their post or, listen to whatever. I mean, as in all things, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think both approaches have real cons to them. If you don't believe that AI has any value, I don't know what you're looking at. That means you haven't really dug into it. And kindly, you're the person that thought the internet wasn't really gonna make it either. Like, don't be that person. Don't be that person.
Yeah.
Like, let's accept it and that, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that there is a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, it's just like there's a hype swirl constantly, And if you are not deep in it, it can be especially if you're not deep in it and you're getting pushed to like make big changes on the back of it, it can be very easy to be like, all right, I believe it should be able to take over everything. Maybe we'll get there. And in fact, what I am saying is I do think we will get there, especially in certain capacities, but we have to work our way there. And so at Churn Zero, yes, we are our customer's platform, but we also take our role as their partner on this strategic shift really, really seriously. Because it's how do you get there in a way that builds on the successes helps us as your AI provider understand what is safe to have AI do and how it needs to be customized to work in particular situations. So, let's teach it how to drive before we just, toss the keys at it and, throw it onto the highway going 90 miles an hour. So we spend a ton of time thinking about how AI is most, can be most useful. And there are two main things that I call out. One is, this sounds so silly, but where it lives. There's like chatbots over here, but like how much time are we going to waste copying and pasting stuff over here and there and like getting the proper information in order to do something. So AI, especially for teams that are, very, very busy, when it's naturally integrated into their workflow, we see adoption eh, be much, much stronger than when they have to go out and actively use it. And frankly, it speaks to the, sort of one of the tenets of AI of like, how can something be done for you without you having to necessarily ask? The second thing, and a really important thing, is context. Like that word feels not big enough because it's not just context on the customer, though that is certainly important. That's why a platform like Turn Zero is very well positioned to be the AI hub for a customer team because we have all this data about this customer. We have this true 360-degree view. We have this longitudinal memory of what this customer has experienced with you. And that is incredibly powerful. But it's how do you harness that? How do you put the proper context around it? Context on the business that you're serving and the particular customer that you're talking to and the products and solutions that you have and the priorities and like how that customer wants to be talked to and how that CSM actually talks. When you think about all the things that go into making a truly great customer experience, the context is so deep. So how do you do that in a way that is integrated and natural? Because that's what's going to allow AI to feel like a true teammate, as opposed to, oh, I can definitely tell AI wrote that. It's just sort of a generic blah blah thing. Because it works when it is tailored and personal.
I think that one of the things that we really have to grapple with is the level of deep thinking that is going to be required to make this really truly sing, right?
Yeah.
Because everything you just described, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I have to get this team on board. I have to get this process. I have to get this software to talk to that software because it doesn't do me any good if my Salesforce CRM doesn't talk to my Churn Zero
Sure.
CSP. And so we're going to enter a new world of ecosystem. It almost reminds me of when Internet of Things was a big
Mhm.
deal of I need to connect my light switches to my GPS so that when I drive into my driveway, all the lights in my house turn on, right? It's like that next generation of everything needs to talk to everything else and everything needs to speak the same language so that we can take full advantage
Yeah.
of the power, the brain, if you will,
Mhm.
that AI is. We need all the other senses to function. So how do we as a group of business leaders, people who are building products, people who are integrating services, thinking as a partnership model, how do you move forward when you have a bunch of disparate data sources that all need to come together and play nice in order for this AI to do something of value?
Yeah, it's a real serious question, and there is one of the hesitations that people will express about really launching AI is like, is my data good enough? Do I have enough of it? Is it in the right format? Is it, is high quality enough? All those sorts of things. Look, no technology, including AI, can fix a broken customer understanding. So if you have no idea what's going on with your customers and you have no data, like nothing's going to help you with that. So my starting thing is yes, data still matters. And having that data centralized still matters. I think we have yet to figure out whether all AI functions across an organization are going to be, put underneath one AI team, or if we're going to expect each department within their platforms that are designed for their particular work to really integrate AI. Like I think there'll be different solutions for different organizations. But I do think again, uh, you know, sure having the data, but then how can you use AI to actually start to chip away at that data quality issue? Some of the very first agents that we introduced at Churn Zero were about data enrichment. So something like, hey, it's super cumbersome or even impossible for CSMs to keep roles updated on their accounts. That's basic stuff, but really important if you're trying to understand the dynamics at a customer, if you're trying to, do automation that might hit the right type of, a right type of contact at the right time. It's important information. Great thing for AI to be able to go through, let's read engagements and let's understand this network of contacts that you're working with. So you can actually use AI to solve your data challenges to a certain degree. And the models are also getting better and better at handling data that is a little wonky. No one's data is perfect. In some cases, it's even like, how do you not give it too much to just like get lost and wander
Yeah.
around in a data jungle kind of thing. So I don't have a perfect answer there. What I will say is there's a lot of solutions out there. I'm trying to say something that doesn't sound too self-serving of churn zero, but there are a lot of solutions out there that allow you to integrate your data such as it is, and then are focused on helping you enrich that data, streamline and configure it for optimal AI consumption and assessment, and then really take action out of that as well. So if that is not something your organization is equipped to do internally, which most are not, at least right now, find a good partner to do that with. Because that's the difference between sort of like trying and maybe getting disillusioned with the entire concept versus, all right, I've got a good base to build on, and now I can keep exploring.
Yeah, and I would add on to that too that, I'm gonna use all the consultancy, like, catchphrases, right? We don't need to eat the elephant, we don't need to boil the ocean, whatever pick your catchphrase of choice.
Yep.
I think that's the thing that I see most people doing wrong when they're talking about their data strategy is they say, "Okay, we're just gonna give it everything, and we're gonna track everything, we're gonna have every metric, and we're gonna give it everything because if it has everything, then therefore it can't possibly miss something." When in reality, your best bet is to choose a use case that you want to achieve, create a very clean strategy to achieve that. So if you wanna never take a note during a meeting again, well, you're not gonna say, "Okay, let's give it every web analytic we've had." We said,
Yeah.
"Okay, we'll get a note taker, we'll have an audio, we'll have a transcription process, we'll have a thing that it does to clean that, and then we'll connect it to our CRM to connect to contacts," right?
100%.
That is how you get really good working solutions. It's not sexy. You're not gonna solve all the world's problems, you're not gonna boil the ocean, but you will get an actual working use case when it comes to your AI experience.
100%. We often, as a product team, we often think about like, okay, if you had a human doing this, what are they doing? Like, what are they bringing to the situation, both, directly and implicitly, and then sort of, on the peripherals. And then start with that. And then is there any additional context you can get it that would enhance that original result? If so, give more context. If not, call a day. Like, this is where having the right context of the right depth in the right place is where AI goes from, a great idea to something that can actually change how a team works. And on that change front, I will say there's a whole other set of things that we could talk around the importance of change management through this. Been very interesting to see sort of as a group, we've all just been like expected to magically become AI experts on our own.
Yeah.
So let's think through how we introduce solutions to teams and what we expect and how we measure success. And let's not get ahead of ourselves. Like, there's a lot of chatter on LinkedIn right now being like, I don't want to hear about how AI makes you more productive. That's not valuable. I only want to hear about how it moves your GRR. I mean, great. Me too like I love that dream, but why are we crapping on, productivity? What you can
Yeah.
do with that productivity can translate into all sorts of other things. So it is, a crawl, walk, run, that's my description of choice, in this, because if you look too far ahead or not far enough ahead, either's not going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah. I mean, even the greatest athletes in the world still go back to the fundamentals. They still work on their dribble, they still work on their free throws. They
Mhm.
don't say, "You know what? I'm the greatest athlete in the world, so I'm only gonna work on my half court shots because that is the biggest, grandest thing I can imagine." That's not how the greatest athletes in the world think, so why do we treat our software, our people, our team, the greatest team members in the world the same way?
Exactly, exactly. And to be fair, I think as professionals, we're all going through like there's just a lot of uncertainty and like excitement, but also uncertainty. So everybody's worried about being left behind. I get it. Like everybody's just sort of doing the best they can with what they have. Um, but my response to that is get practical, get tactical, because if you have those foundations, that's what's going to open up more possibilities. When we say that we're building towards a future that is autonomous, we're starting by getting the fundamentals in place. And the fundamentals in place, and we're adding on the next layers and the next layers and the next layers. We're building toward, as opposed to just, trying to jump to the end point.
Considering all of the people that you know or aspire to know, who else is out there? Who else do we need to be listening to?
When you said you were going to ask me this question, I was like, oh gosh, this is a hard one because I'm gonna dodge you just slightly because I think when I've been asked this question, my problem is that I think what works for people changes a lot. Like what medium resonates, what type of content resonates can really change and it can evolve. Like personally, I've gone through periods where having a day-to-day mentor was the most impactful thing. And then other phases where books and podcasts were really doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So I think I like to encourage people to say dabble, find out what works best for you. For me right now, my biggest source of growth is peer networks. Talking to other practitioners who are doing the same job, facing the same hard questions and making the same messy calls that I am. Sure, there's lots of very interesting and valid and valuable takes that are out there from, influencers, analysts and consultants and journalists and all that sort of stuff. But it can be overwhelming, especially on topics like AI. So I personally really always gravitate towards the operators, people who are really running the plays and not just calling it, because that's where I find community. That's where I find, real advice and understanding. So, when I look at LinkedIn, which can get a bad rap and rightfully so sometimes, I try to sort through and find the people that are actually doing the work, because then that's very useful. What I will say though is, one thing I am a huge, huge proponent of is executive coaching. And I realize this isn't a particular person, though I am going to talk about my coach here. Um, I will say I think executive coaching is so important, particularly for women in leadership, because in my own experience and from seeing others, we're least likely to invest in ourselves often at the exact moment that we need it the most. My coach, her name is Mel Savage, and I've been working with her for a few years, and genuinely, she's changed the way that I show up as a leader. It's changed the way that I handle hard conversations, the way I process setbacks without spiraling, the way that I understand what I actually want for my career versus what I'm supposed to be thinking about. So I'd encourage people, don't think about executive coaching as a luxury or something you do only if there's a problem. Think about it as something that you do to maintain and upgrade your operating system. When I first started working with Mel, I kept like describing myself as broken in certain scenarios. And she's like, no, you're just running on code that you wrote a long time ago and it needs to be updated. So, a lot of it is about learning your own patterns, learning how you work under pressure, understanding the stories that you tell yourself about what's possible. And a good coach isn't going to tell you what to do, but rather they're going to help you see yourself clearly enough that you can figure it out for yourself. So if you're looking to make an investment, and it is an investment, I will be fair, it is an investment. Finding a coach, finding one that, whose style really works for you is something that I highly, highly encourage. It was the most compounding professional investment I ever made. And frankly, I probably made it too late. So, be quicker on the game than I was.
And if someone is really connecting with you, they want to learn more, they want to follow along, where can they find you online?
Absolutely. So churnzero.com, zero is spelled out there. That's where you can learn all about how we're actively building towards this future of autonomous CX that I've been talking about today. We're also on LinkedIn. If you are in CX and you want to be in a room full of practitioners that are talking about all these things, we have our annual CX conference in November on the 5th and 6th in Nashville. So would love to see some people there. As for me personally, I am all over Churn Zero's website. I do lots of webinars for us and things like that. I will also be at Zero In. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I will be honest, I do not post much to my marketing team's chagrin, but I always welcome real messages and connections. I am a self-professed CS geek, so I am always happy to talk shop. So if you want to find me there, always happy to share my experiences for whatever they might be worth.
And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. If you search Alyssa Nolte and find the notorious plant killer, you know you have found the right Alyssa Nolte. I also write on Substack. Abby, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and have this conversation today. I think, one, it's really important for people to not only think about where they are in their CS journey and their solutions, but where they should be going and what tomorrow looks like. And I'm really excited about the work that Churn Zero is doing to drive that tomorrow forward and bring that into today. So thank you so much for giving us a sneak peek onto what you guys are working on.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. There are millions of podcasts out there, and something like 70,000 new episodes are released every single day. It's not lost on me how lucky I am to have such an incredible community who show up and support this show. To be a guest or nominate someone who should join me on the pod, head to alyssanolte.com. And if you're looking for ad-free episodes, you can join me on Substack. I post all new episodes of my podcasts and share appearances on other people's shows, plus bonus content and updates on what I'm working on. Search Alyssa Likes to Talk or tap the link in the show notes.